Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome in this afternoon session on sustainable supply chains. First of all, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time in your busy schedules to join us this afternoon. My name is Kirsti Geertse and I'm Key Account Manager for Shippers and Forwarders at Port of Antwerp-Bruges. It's a real honor to be here. It's an honor to be your master of ceremony today. But first of all, and maybe most of all, it's an honor to have this in a joint role together with my friend Bob van Steenwegen, Senior Manager Corporate Affairs at Essers. Bob, great minds think alike, and it was during a summer holiday in Belgium that you called me and you pitched the idea to have a joint session at the EPCA this year. And as our both organizations value sustainability a lot, it was a very good idea to go for a joint event and to go for a dynamic session where we have on one hand experts of the industry on the stage, but also in close interaction with the audience. It's an honor to be here, Bob. We have also, based on this shared vision, we decided to go for this topic, but also because there are a lot of challenges in the chemical industry. You have energy crisis, there are climate change problems, we have regulation, we have supply chain disruptions. But nevertheless, we do think it's a good momentum to go for sustainable transition and decarbonization in the industry. We all have the ambition to become climate neutral, but how do we get there? We want to go beyond the slogans. What can we do today? What can we do tomorrow? How can chemical producers integrate their Scope 3 emissions into their product carbon footprint, and how can they valorize it towards the clients? We won't find all answers, I think, today, Bob, on all these questions, but nevertheless, I hope you will have an inspiring afternoon with us, and we do look forward to the journey.
Okay, thank you, Kirsti. Well, indeed, we explicitly decided to have a dynamic session without boring presentations. So we promise you to show no single slide. You will see in a minute the journey of today, and that will be the only slide of today. So you can take a picture if you want, because that's the only slide you will see today. We have chosen for a mix of 4 different formats: a TED Talk, a panel debate, a live poll, and a speed interview. So we'll start with the TED Talk, and for that we have invited Christoph Wolff, who is the CEO of Smart Freight Center, and he will address the paradox which is typically for our industry. We are, in fact, with 2 industries, the chemical market and the logistics market, 2 industries with a substantial carbon footprint, while at the same time we want to be forerunners. So that paradox, is that a paradox? Can we overcome that challenge? That's the topic Christoph will address. And then, if that paradox would seem to be reality, then we have a panel debate, and that will address on the topic, okay, what is the time gap? What is the time gap between, on the one hand, we have formulated all very ambitious targets. We have set KPIs. We have been working on CO2 reporting. And at the same time, we are all waiting for the electrification of Europe and the hydrogen to be fully developed and everywhere available. How to overcome that time gap? How can we decarbonize today without waiting for that, all those technology requirements? That is a topic the panel will address, led by our moderator, Alan Gelder, who is the head of refinery and chemicals at Wood Mackenzie. In the panel, we have Sophie Wallijn, head of logistics EMEA at Eastman. We have Joost Nasens, director transport and logistics at CEFIC, the European Chemical Industry Council. And we have Timo Spanix, the business unit president of FOBAC Belgium. So very much looking forward to that panel debate, and I will at the same time take into account your voice. So we will have also your input from the audience. Also the audience online because this is a live online broadcasted session. So welcome everyone online also. And everyone can then join via a Mentimeter. So please hold your cell phone at hand. We will inform you when you can answer the live poll. And then the homework, the difficult part is for our hosts, for ourselves, and for that we will bring our both CCOs of Port of Antwerp-Bruges and Essers on stage, Tom Houtekiet and Pascal Franken, and they will make the conclusions of these sessions and also explain how we as hosts can and are contributing to that, the sustainable supply chains in chemical logistics. So, Kirsti, I would say no energy to waste, no time to waste. We're ready to go?
Yes. Okay, I have the privilege to call on stage our keynote speaker for today, Christoph Wolf, CEO of Smart Freight Center. Please join us. You're in this role since 2022. You were also member of the Executive Committee for the World Economic Forum. You were heading the Global Mobility Platform that includes initiatives around sustainability and digitalization. Your title of the speech is Creating Sustainable Supply Chains for the European Chemical Industry. So we're very curious to hear your comments on this topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I think the format of a TED Talk implies I can actually move around here and don't have to sit in one of these boring chairs. So indeed, thank you very much for Essers and Port of Antwerp for inviting me in to give a few reflections. And I would like to start with some of the statements that were done earlier today, early in the morning. 10 years ago, or maybe even a bit less, there was a framework. People called some industries hard-to-abate industries. Yeah? And hard-to-abate industries meant actually that they were most likely last to turn around and become Paris compatible. And maybe they are at that stage. There was like the last 5 to 10% of CO2 emissions, which maybe were very hard to get. That conversation has changed, yeah. And Bob was speaking. We're talking in the connection between chemicals and supply chains. We're talking about industries that actually were part of this hard-to-abate framework. So the chemical industry alongside with the steel industry and the cement industry. So they were said, well, this is also process emissions. It's not just, this is really hard to get. And the transport side, especially the heavy transport, heavy goods, aviation and shipping were also said hard to abate. And my statement for today, so what I would like to talk about in the next 10 to 15 minutes is we have to change that wording. Yeah? So it's no longer hard to abate, it's ready to abate. The chemical industry specifically can play an important leadership role because it holds all the keys in the hand to actually change also the decarbonization pathway for many other industries. So it's not just about chemical itself, it's about other industries as well. Now, the world around the hard-to-abate sectors, or formerly hard-to-abate, now ready-to-abate sectors, actually have zoomed in terms of reporting, in terms of disclosure, and so on. So there's actually no place to hide. Yeah? When it comes to the governments, yeah, the regulatory action, when it comes to investors, when it comes to customers, everybody wants to know exactly how much carbon footprint do you have, not only in your own operation, your scope 1, or in your energy footprint. No, there's actually more and more regulation, including the newest EU directive on the corporate due diligence that will require you to go deep into your supply chain, yeah, into your scope 3 emissions and take responsibility for that. Yeah? With that comes the the challenge to measure, because what you can't improve, what you don't measure. And this is where, as a smart freight center, so we have a special role to play. Like 10 years ago, my colleagues designed the so-called GLEC framework. This has now become the ISO standard, under leadership. And this is actually the globally basically accounted, or the globally recognized framework for accounting and reporting emissions. It is a standard that the Science Based Target Initiative, to which many of the companies are committed to, actually has referred to as a methodology. And the same is true for the Carbon Disclosure Project, which is actually the primary cross-industry platform to account for emissions. And so as I said, investors, governments, and customers, they all want to know more. And the question that everybody needs to ask themselves is, are you able to really live up to that challenge? Yeah? So is your company able to quantify in a reliable way logistics emissions, not only scope 1 and 2, but only scope 3, set targets once you have established the values, identify solutions, and then measure progress. And I really like the motto of this conference, Collaboration for Impact, because what is very clear, no one can do it by themselves. So you need collaboration across the sector, because it's an ecosystem now. It is systemic solutions rather than actually marginal activities that everybody does by themselves. Now, the chemical industry, again, now ready to abate, has in many ways taken responsibility of this great transformation. So there's a lot of conversations, and before I come to transportation, about new feedstocks, bio-based feedstock, rather than coming from the petroleum industry. Sustainable carbon cycles. So the chemical industry is the first one to basically say we need to become truly circular. And new energy carriers. Yeah, it's also high temperature heat from renewables, green hydrogen as an energy carrier. And I see I'm a chemical engineer myself, and I'm currently involved in some work that actually the German government is doing in looking at these Verbundstandorte, at these basically clusters of production in Ludwigshafen, in Antwerp, in Leverkusen, in Höchst, etc. What does actually change if the whole industry is now moving to different feedstock bases and to different energy carriers? So how does actually the synergies, and how do actually the economic value basically work? And but at the same time, and the colleague from the Maersk McKinley Møller Center for Zero Carbon Shipping said it this morning, there's an enormous amount of revenue potential, because the industries, especially the transport industries, will need new fuels. Yeah? So there is actually enormous amount for green ammonia, green methanol. In building efficiency, there's new actually materials in order to isolate, in order to build houses, and the whole revolution in batteries is largely a revolution carried by the chemical industry on advanced chemistry. Now, the chemical industry has also been a pioneer to lower carbon intensity in transport. We heard earlier today that that there is actually the share of rail transport in chemical is higher than in other industries, and there are actually joint activities out of this group to move intermodal solutions forward. There's actually a high reliance on ocean carriers, who have always been the lowest emitting sector on a per ton kilometer basis. But they also, in order to moving forward towards new energy carriers, new propulsion systems around green methanol and green ammonia, which are actually also well advanced. I mean, there are now the MAN Energy Solutions. Others are basically running pilot and test runs on ships with new propulsion systems and offering retrofit engine retrofits in order to actually design green corridors and the bunkering systems end to end. And as I said, the chemical companies basically also are working together within the framework of what the Smart Freight Center does to electrify road transport. So Dow Chemical and others are some of our core partners when it comes to actually pooling demand, aggregating demand on electric trucks, and going to the O&Ms and say there's really some demand out there. So we can bend the curve, you can actually more confidently move your production program from the traditional diesel carriers to electric trucks. So where would I take the optimism from? Yeah, so to say it's no longer hard to abate, it's really ready to abate. And I would like to touch on 3 topics. Yeah, number 1 is the technology. So the boundaries between energy, transport, and chemicals have been blurring. So the new fuels are chemical based. The renewable energy is actually basically everything is getting electrified, and therefore the energy infrastructure is paramount. The storage costs, the battery costs have actually, if you compare 10 years ago, have gone down by 90%. Yeah, so they're hitting what is seen as a core target, the mark of $100 per kilowatt hours, with advanced chemistry, so with much higher energy and density for the new batteries, for cobalt or nickel, etc. And move towards basically more sustainable chemistry, and also that allows to have a much more balanced industry around the world, yeah, with more reshoring, with more value added in Europe, etc. So this industry is changing in many ways. And the chemical innovation, as I said, is also pushing the limit in heavy-duty propulsion systems. Yeah, so trucks actually are some years ago we basically said, oh, okay, this is going to be difficult. So I mean, some of you or many of you may have seen at what price Tesla is pushing in the US the semi truck into the market, actually at a level that is even on a sticker price, actually compatible to diesel trucks. So these are all kind of big changes that actually may move the needle in many ways, and all has to do with chemistry. Yeah, so also the fact that the kind of 100-year-old process like the Fischer-Tropsch synthesis, yeah, is being looked again in order to create synthetic fuels for sustainable aviation, yeah, which is seen as a 70% formula for aviation. So technology is one. The second is data. Yeah? So as I said, what you can't measure, you can't improve. And the Smart Freight Center has its role as a platform for global emission accounting. So we just basically, the GLEC framework turned into the ISO framework. And we have also developed, and I've actually mentioned earlier today with Dow and Berchi as one of the pilot partners, the so-called Smart Freight Center Exchange Network. So in order to actually measure end-to-end in a certifiable and a reliable way, the carbon footprint of your transport supply chains, you need reliable feedback, yeah, from many suppliers around the whole supply chain. And the difficulty was so far that those data are seen as critical and are not easy to exchange, or not. Many are hesitate to exchange, which basically meant that rather than primary data, default data were put in, and so the numbers were not as meaningful as they could be. Yeah, and now we have developed a peer-to-peer basically technology where actually these direct exchanges between carriers and shippers are not public in a database, but they're basically aggregated in a way that each and every company sees the aggregated footprint, but it's still auditable, certifiable, and scalable. And we hope that this will make it actually hassle-free going forward to measure the carbon footprint. And the third topic is about collaboration. I think as a motto of this conference, I think the art of decarbonization, and we have many have said, okay, I mean, even in a period where the economical downturn, or where there's more of an economical downturn, so it's important that this becomes affordable, yeah, and because at the beginning, when you bring in new technologies, green technologies, they cost more before economies of scale and innovation basically kicks in. And we have developed together with many others the so-called book and claim framework. And book and claim framework basically means that you find ways to allocate the green premium via environmental certificates to that party downstream in the value chain that is willing to pay for it. Yeah? So it takes a lot of technology. So there's actually registries for these environmental certificates that are actually closely connected to its physical equivalent. So there's registries so that they can actually, there's a chain of custody, there's no greenwashing, no double counting, etc. So this is actually in advanced stages. And I would be actually, and you can see it already in the aviation space that for example, Microsoft or Google and others actually pay large contingents of sustainable aviation fuel, put it into the system, count it towards their own carbon balance, and therefore actually allow scale up and costs coming down. So this is actually something there where collaboration across the whole value chain is actually necessary. So it takes the airlines, the airports, and the customers, and the regulator, and the financiers in order to make that happen. So I would try to leave you with a can-do message. Yeah? So I said at the beginning, it's no longer hard to abate; it's ready to abate, and I'm very much convinced myself that the combination of innovation and ingenuity, and also engineering talent, will help us to bend the curve and to overcome the chicken and egg situations. We know the clock is ticking, and that we don't have time to lose. And as Smart Freight Center, we're looking forward to engage with the industry, the chemical industry. We've done that 2 years ago with the colleagues from Cefic in a very much a deep dive, and happy to do something like that again. To welcome you to the SFC exchange network of peer-to-peer exchange of emission information, to calculate your total carbon footprint, and to work with you to scale investment into new solutions through the book and claim community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christophe, for these very applicable insights. So we remember that the glass is half full, and that is a nice message of optimism. We remember also that there are 3 domains that make the scaling of decarbonization on short and midterm really feasible. That's technology, data, and collaboration. Now the question is, this sounds nice, but the question is, does this positivism also pass a test of practice? And for that we have experts, and we have in fact 2 groups of experts. We have you are here and online, and we will ask you to participate with your input via Mentimeter in a minute. And we have some fine selection of renowned speakers here on stage.
True. Correct, Bob. Yes, we are ready for the second part of this session, the panel debate with our industry experts. And for that, I would like to call our moderator on stage together with the panelists, please. Give them an applause, please.
Panelists, if you please make your way up. So for the next 40 minutes or so, we're really going to try and address the key questions in terms of decarbonizing logistics on what can we do now, what should we do tomorrow, and what needs to be addressed to deliver tomorrow's plans today. So I'm Alan Gelder, VP Refining Chemicals Oils Markets for Wood Mackenzie. We've got lots of views on markets, lots of views on assets. Logistics is an extension to that. Delighted to be here to help moderate the panel. Let me just introduce my fellow panelists. So going that way. Sophie Wallin, logistics manager for Eastman, covering EMEA. Spent 9 years with Exxon after graduating in sales, process improvement, supply planning, marine logistics. Various roles with Eastman. Now has full responsibility for Eastman's logistics in EMEA. Welcome. Next is H.Essers, Transport and Logistics Director at Cefic since 2019, an advocate for the chemical sector at European authorities, and giving guidance to members on transports and logistics safety. Chemical engineer, okay, I quite like that, have been one myself. 25 years experience in project management, production, supply chain management at BASF Antwerp. Welcome. And last but not least, Timo Spanix, actually a Shell, sort of come from the Shell school, having done 16 years with them in operational leadership roles in downstream and integrated gas. Joined Royal Vopak in 2020 in the Netherlands, moved to Belgium, and now responsible for all Vopak's businesses in country, including the not insubstantial task of converting an old refinery site into the Vopak Energy Park, which I'm sure is not without its challenges. We may get into some of those. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is where you need to participate as well. So actually, the thing that we need to do is get your phones out, and actually there is a QR code, which I can see here, but I'm not sure there, to load Mentimeter, so we can ask you a question that make sure we get it working, and then we can get your inputs, and we can get the panelists to reflect on it. I'm going to try and do this as well, and I haven't got my teenagers with me, so you'll have to forgive me if this doesn't quite work. Oh, here we go. Instructions. Mine's taking its time. Oh. Okay. Are you guys all on? Because I'm not. That could be me, though. Show of hands, everybody. People logged on. There you? Okay. Okay. Right. Okay. So let's take. Oh yes, now it's working. Great. So the first question to check that things are working is: do you agree with the optimism you've just listened to from the TED talk? The numbers are going down. Oh, up. Right, okay. Thankfully, no dramatic music, but we seem to be landing at about 3/4. Oh, wait. Majority say yes. Panelists, let's get your thoughts. Sophie, what do you think? What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely share the optimism. I think there's lots we can do within the industry, and especially when it comes to logistics around decarbonizing. And I think the big advantage in logistics is that often it goes hand in hand with cost savings as well. So it makes the changes sustainable in the other sense as well.
Thank you. Joost?
Yeah, me too. I share the optimism. I think we really have the potential to be a leading sector in decarbonization of supply chains. Although there are some points of attention which probably are related with the no. But I also have to say that, or my impression that is that we are also perceived by, for example, European authorities as a leading sector in managing transport and supply chain emissions. That's at least my perception so far.
Timo, are you going to become devil's advocate and say no?
Turn this around, indeed. No, I think so. So I definitely share the optimism, and I always like to test that against the stuff that's really happening. And maybe just to share two things on that. So first of all, what I see happening, and I also reflect a bit on what Vopak does, is companies are setting themselves ambitious targets to actually become greener. And that is, I think, a good start to shape strategy and put the right action to that. So I think that's definitely the first step, and that is happening, I guess, all across the industry. And the second thing is also just the courage of companies to dive a bit into the unknown and just try to start and facilitate the things that are needed to greenify and to decarbonize the logistics that we have. And I think one of the examples that you mentioned around our efforts to demolish an old refinery and build something back that's going to support the industry to decarbonize is, I think, also an evidence of the fact that people and companies want to take proper action to just decarbonize our system further. So definitely very good spirit from this side, Alan.
Okay, great. Okay. Mentimeter's working. Panelists are working in terms of technology works, broad agreement. So this next question, and largely for the audience, so we can help characterize what the audience is doing, and that's both people in the room and also people online. It's a bit of a yes/no question. Are you actively involved in reducing emissions in your company's supply chain? Yes, yes, no. Slow builder numbers, 35 sort of replies. Thankfully, thank you for self-selecting because you're interested in decarbonising your supply chain. That's exactly what this panel is about. So, Sophie, I'll probably randomly move the order around, but let's keep the ladies first for this one. What are Eastman doing in terms of reducing the emissions from the supply, from your supply chain, because you're responsible for it?
We only have half an hour, right? No,
summary, yes.
We're doing a lot of things. I think one of the obvious things, like focusing on the switch from road to intermodal, is an obvious one, including that in our tendering process, so that year on year we managed to improve that. I think today we're already half-half for within Europe, switching to intermodal, which I think is a nice achievement. Another example is a big project we did a few years ago to build a container yard. Partnership with container yards. So basically all the outbound shipments from our manufacturing sites, the biggest manufacturing sites in Europe, to the port are happening now through barge instead of road. So a lot of trucks taking away from the road. Another thing, maybe less tangible, is network optimization design. I think if you look at those exercises, often efficiency, cost saving go hand in hand when you talk about networks. Struggle we have internally is resources to do that. So what we've set up is a standing partnership with universities. So you have students who have all the knowledge fresh in their mind, very enthusiastic about this topic as well. They love to join Eastman, run a project on that, so it's really a win-win, also from a talent building perspective from our side. And we had good examples of projects where we really saw the impact. We really made the changes in terms of warehouse setup and things like that to realize those sustainability advantages. Maybe last couple of things, I think, are also easy things to do, like payload optimization, working with the customer, shifting to full truckloads, but also packaging configuration, something we recently start working more on with manufacturing, by just making small changes, increasing stackability or things like that, making packages fit better the trucks, things like that. So simple things you can do and you don't need a great deal of resources for. So.
Thank you.
Just a snapshot.
Yeah. Timo, what Vopak, still a hotel for liquids? I once heard your business described as
liquid and gases.
And gases. So what's Vopak doing?
Yeah, so I think we obviously recognize that we are an important part of the supply chain of most of our customers, and for them to decarbonize their supply chain, Vopak has an important role to play. So. Coming back to the first point I made on the previous question is that we're reducing our own emissions where we can. So we are electrifying where we can, so moving from gas-fired boilers to electrical-fired boilers, all through green electricity instead of grey. We try to help maritime businesses with shore power to reduce their local emissions. But I think most importantly is we try to use the locations that we have and the facilities that we have to decarbonize the transport of our customers. And it's actually quite interesting to see that the demand is picking up for green methanol, for ammonia, for example. And we will deliver the infrastructure to our customers to be able to decarbonize their part of the logistics, to facilitate the larger chemical players to decarbonize their supply chains further. So yes, we're reducing our own emissions by mainly electrification, but also supporting a lot of the logistics partners of most of the people here in the room to decarbonize their modes of transport.
Thank you. Joost, Cefix?
Yeah, we are a bit a special animal here.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
as an association, but maybe first of all, our core task of CEFIC is of course advocacy. So what we did last year especially is doing a lot of discussion and advocacy on the greening freight package, which has been published in July. I think that in the 3 proposals that were proposed, the weight and dimensions, the count emission EU, and on the rail capacity management, there is a lot of, let's say, meat on the bone. A lot of our concerns have been taken into consideration. So I'm quite positive and quite proud that we have achieved already that aspect. Another action which I'm quite proud of also is what we did together with the Smart Freight Center, is this new module. It was module 5, and now in the last version is chapter 4 of the GLEC framework. This is a module that we developed together with our members, also with ECTA, the Transport Association, EFTCO, the Cleaning Association. We collaborated also with the Inland Waterways. In this module, we have defined specific chemical industry emission standards, taking into account our specific transport operation categories, let's say. So we take into consideration our payloads, our typical empty runs, and so on. And for that, what is also very important is that we also included activities like cleaning of trucks, heating of containers. These are types of activities that have a big impact on emissions, but you can never find the values for that. So we really try to do that within the GLEC. And then in the next step, we translated all of these emission guidelines into our SQOS system. So that is the assessment scheme of CEFIC to assess logistic service providers on their safety, quality, and now also on emissions. So the current users, the members of SQOS, which are most of the chemical companies, they can now consult reports of more than 3,000 logistic service providers on what is their performance today in emission measuring, reporting, and also in planned actions for the future. Yeah? And the last action I would like to say, you see, we all do a lot also as CEFIC, but we might come later also into that, is in May this year, we did an exercise, let's say a data analysis exercise. We created what we call CEFIC Transport Insights. And what we did is we linked Eurostat data, so transport data from Eurostat. We connected it with the data from the handbook of external costs of transport, and we connected it with the data from the GLEC framework. And by doing so, we provided a kind of full transparency for members, but especially also for member states and for national associations to show what is the current performance of the chemical sector in your country, but also we showed what is the external cost of transport of chemicals and what are the emissions linked with that. And by doing this simulation, we kind of try to provide, let's say, the added value of decarbonization expressed in euros and in tons CO2 emissions. And this is the kind of support which we try to give to the members, and maybe later I can give some more details on what are main learnings from there. Yeah, so...
No, maybe that's probably the time to come on to the next question. This is probably when, as a moderator, this is when fear kicks in. Because this is not a yes-no question, this is not a pick from a list. We're going to try and do this for a word cloud. So what is the 1, 2 words that strike you on the short-term actions we should take to tackle the environmental impact on supply chains? So no big sentence, no big, thank you, somebody's got it, big, regular, not a sentence, the key 1 or 2 words, put them down, we'll see how the word cloud forms, and then we can see, I will seek the inputs of the panelists. So we are, and I suppose the other thing I should have said is please do not swear. I'm not sure we can filter them out, but put your thoughts down. We'll give it a minute, we'll give it a couple more seconds, and then get the panelists to reflect on how this word cloud is building. It's a couple of, and the risk for the panelists now is they've got no idea which I'm going to pick. Regulation is sadly front and center all the time. So I'm going to come to Timo first, because I'm going to avoid the Cefic advocacy to last, just to not. So hold your horses, Jost. Timo, regular. You've worked in Shell across multiple jurisdictions, because I didn't mention been in Qatar. You've done downstream, you've done oil and gas, you've been in the Netherlands, you're in Belgium. What's the short-term thing that could be fixed on regulation? And then I'll come to Sophie. So if you want to have a rant about the regulators, now's your chance. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess regulation is an extremely important part of the puzzle. But before regulation came in first, collaboration was in the middle of this.
No, you're not changing. No, you're not changing on me.
Of this word cloud. So I think regulation is part of the puzzle, and I think at the end of the day, it's about getting the right stakeholders around the table to work the concrete solutions. And obviously, regulation is an extremely important part of getting things done. But the regulators themselves also need the right information and the right input and the right fora to make sure that they do what's right. So for me, the collaboration bit, and luckily to see that during my speak, collaboration starts to get first again.
How many times are you voting collaboration?
Exactly. That is for me really the answer to our very complex problem that we have. So yes, regulation is extremely important, but it's part of the puzzle. It's part of the community that needs to be around the table when we discuss decarbonizing options, but it's definitely not the only bit that is going to hold us back to do this. So it is part of the puzzle, it's part of the solution, and the regulators need to be at the table when we discuss the problems that we need to solve.
Thank you. Sophie, what leadership, collaboration, what do you... What's the thing that most resonates most with you?
Yeah, well, I think what it comes back down for me, also talking about regulation, it's even before that, right? I think it's about, okay, we need regulation, we need collaboration to make things happen, but why are we going to do it? Because we believe it's the right thing to do, right? We're not doing it because the regulator says so. We're not collaborating to be compliant, but we're doing it because there's a higher goal we want to achieve. There's a cost we create by our production, by our transport to society, and we have to take accountability for that, right? So I think the first action to take is for us to realize that, yeah, we're not talking about doing something because we have to, from a regulation perspective, but it's because the right thing to do, right? And I think that's pretty fundamental. And if everybody would be in that mindset, I think, yeah, the actions will follow from themselves, right? So, yeah. I get it.
It's taking a leadership role as well.
Yeah,
if you're saying
it's kind of leadership. Yeah, it's kind of leadership. And I think, yeah, also talking from Eastman perspective, we're pretty convinced on that belief, and that's really driving our actions. And of course, we want to be compliant, but taking that leadership and being courageous in the industry, I think, is a very, very important thing to do.
Thank you. Jost, what do you want to reflect on that?
I'm investigating these numbers. Just a remark on regulation. My opinion is here, if you embrace the ambitions of the commissions, which is reducing transport emissions with 90%, and you translate that in your company objectives and strategies to implement it, then you don't need regulation. You need regulation when you're not able to do things yourself. It's a bit, Of course, having emission standards on vehicles and so on, this is where regulation can help in setting clear targets translated into technological aspects and so on. But we don't need regulation to collaborate. We don't need regulation to redesign our supply chains, to see where is and to find the modal shift potential. Maybe that brings me to our transport insights, because I'm really eager to tell you that. What we have learned in the transparency that was given. First of all, the European chemical industry has an external cost of 6 billion euros each year. That's a cost paid by society for accommodating our transports. Yeah? At the same time, we have an emission volume of around 10 million tons of CO2 with that. When you look into the details of the numbers, we have seen that, and if you focus on road transport in particular, we see that 15% of the tons transported by a road are long-distance transports, meaning beyond 500 kilometers. These 15%, that might not sound like a big number for a supply chain manager, looking at your total tons, but these 15% are responsible for 55% of the external impact, which is the million-ton kilometers. This external impact is what society bears. So if we would only try to shift half of these tons on the long distance roads, if we would shift that to rail, for example, which does not sound as a big effort because it's long distance anyway, that would immediately double the share of rail freight for chemicals. We are now at 14-15% for chemicals. That would bring us automatically to a share of 30%. So what I would say as a short-term action, our short-term action should be in 2030, we have as chemical sector 30% of rail freight, just by focusing on where the win can happen. Yeah? I also see leadership is about setting the objectives for me. Collaboration, of course, is very important. I think many companies can already achieve a lot by looking at their own supply chains. But I have, for example, very good examples of collaboration. When you look at the Port of Antwerp, for example, in the area of single wagon transport, which is for many companies also an issue, we see that the chemical companies in that area have bundled their forces, have really bundled also the single wagon transport volume in order to allow last mile services by one operator. In this area, we showed as a chemical sector that we can collaborate on an operational level. Yeah? But the only thing there is you have to walk the talk. And it's a bit a pity that, but in one of the words was walk the talk, yeah? And it was really small.
It was there.
Yeah, where was it? It's already there on the top. We, as a chemical industry, we talk a lot about collaboration, but when I look, for example, on digital collaboration, look at eClick, which was the collaboration environment in digitalization, we see a lot of hesitation of the companies to really jump into the water and to do that effectively. So I think a lot of truth in that, but there is a lot of potential on short term that we can take.
Let's build on that with the next question, actually, because the next question, again, it's a word cloud. If it was easy, we would have done it. It would largely be done. So, what are the main bottlenecks that you're experiencing now? Again, single word, if you can, short phrase. What are the main bottlenecks that you see as stopping reducing the carbon? Ooh, price. Wow. Okay, in reducing logistics footprint. Is it? Infrastructure, price, capex, level playing field. Okay. Yeah. Current economy, reliability. European hydrogen global. Not sure I get that one. Divergent thinking. Lots and lots of challenges. Sophie, I'm going to go to you. I'm going to go to you first because costs came up and it's still floating fairly high, scoring highly. But in your couple of questions back, you talked about making things more efficient, which brings the cost down. Can you, how do you overcome that? Because biofuels are more expensive. There is a green premium on
Definitely,
biofuels.
yeah. I think the examples I was sharing were really examples where there is a cost decrease, but obviously if we want to take more steps than this, it's once we run out of options, right? For example, thinking about electrical trucks or something, for example, transport will be more expensive than with the diesel truck. And then always these things come up, but it refers to the point I made earlier around, okay, who's going to pay for that premium, right? But again, there is no such thing as a green premium. There's only a hidden cost to the way we operate today. And back to Joost's point, we have to find a way to internalize those costs, and then there will be an equal playing field and a fair comparison of two options. Now we're comparing dirty transport with clean transport without including the cost of the dirt in that first option. No, but that's what we do,
there's
right?
The externalities are just
exactly,
buried under the carpet. Yeah.
And I think so it's just a different way of looking at it. And if we don't start looking at that a different way, we're going to keep on seeing dozens of bottlenecks not to do something.
Thank you. Timo, there's a whole raft of things I could throw at you. Which is the one resonates most strongly with you?
I think Sophie already elaborated on the cost bit, and I think at the end of the day, when you get the right people together, talk about solutions, at the end of the day, there also be a cost-sharing structure that, to a certain extent, works. And there again, the fact that that's the case is visible by the stuff that's happening at the moment. Yeah? We are building ammonia import terminals for ammoniac bunkering. So there are models with the right people around the table. Although we understand there's costs associated to get this infrastructure in place, it is happening. So that gives me confidence on the fact that we are able to solve these problems when we come together and talk about specific logistics. So that really stood out, and obviously close to my heart with being responsible for what we do in Belgium for Vopak, is that infrastructure bit. I think we need to still build a lot of new infrastructure in order to make sure we can decarbonize those pieces of the logistics chain that are currently still built on the old models. So cost and infrastructure really stand out for me.
Thank you. Joost, in your role for Cefic, there's topics like knowledge, lack of reliable data, level playing field. There's all data expertise, regulation, mind setting. There's a whole host of things, opportunities, challenges. Yeah?
Well, the lack of reliable data, this is something we can kind of manage ourselves also. We should not forget that as a chemical industry, as producers, we make the contracts with logistics service providers. We can collaborate to get reliable data, and the Commission, for example, is really supporting all of these efforts. With the Count Emission EU, we have provided with the GLEC chapter assistance to the members to calculate the emissions. So I'm not sure whether this should be a bottleneck. What I do believe that is that, first of all, regulation and corresponding investments. Regulation is slow, investment is slow, takes a lot of time. So I think we should be smarter than the regulation in that. The first thing that we need to do, and here, what is the main bottleneck today? I'm asking, we have a lot of companies now, we have objectives in all of the companies on our Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. We all say we want to be carbon neutral until, or most of us say, we want to be carbon neutral until 2050. Some companies says that we will include the scope 3, but the scope 3 is about a lot about raw materials, which you cannot really control. Yeah? But nobody is very clear on which are the objectives on their distribution system. Yeah? And what I think we first need is a clear top-down commitment, a strategy and a plan describing where do we want to be between now, 2030, 2040, and so on, to show also to regulators that we have a plan and we have an ambition, and now we need supporting regulation, now we need infrastructure to accommodate that, but we are offering a kind of return of investment to the regulators to do that. So I think that, for me, one of the main bottlenecks is this unclarity about the company's objectives and ambitions, specifically on the distribution aspects. Yeah? And then, and I said, I think collaboration, we mentioned that already. So the cost, maybe I say one word on the cost.
Yeah, one word.
Yeah, because you are fully right with that. If we say cost, that's what we say from a company perspective. If you look from a society perspective and a regulator perspective, the first answer you get is, and what about my costs from society? Yeah? Then we are talking about external costs. Do you know that, for example, what we investigate with these transport insights, the external cost for a typical long distance road transport, we are talking about 800 euro per transport. Let's say basically 1 euro per kilometer is paid by society, not by you. Yeah? If we would integrate that cost in our procurement decisions, I think the cost balance, rail, road could look quite different then. So this element of cost, if I go with that to the Commission, they close the door and they say, please take first care of our costs.
We could have an interesting debate on competitiveness of what happens to the industry and costs for people in other regions, but we won't. Now is not the place for that because we're focusing on logistics. So through to the last question, because we've got probably about 5-6 minutes left for the whole session, and this we've given you the opportunity to choose. So, as an audience, what's the first action that should be taken to resolve the bottlenecks? Please get voting. We have regulation advocacy, do nothing and wait, industry collaboration, bring it to the board, which means basically send it upwards, force a decision, co-investments with logistics service providers, to which competing with industry collaboration, a little bit of interpretation, anything else? So I'm just conscious of time, we're not going to come to Joost on this one, because he's advocated very strongly industry collaboration, so he's sitting there with a big smile on his face, so yeah, that's great. But we've got, since logistics service providers on either end of the panel, guys, how can this be made to happen? What are your thoughts on this response?
Yeah, I think maybe on the industry collaboration, we have a good example, and I think Joost also referred to it already. I think it's probably like a year ago. You need to know our manufacturing sites are heavily reliant on rail supply, but single wagon load, because we don't have sufficient volume for full trains. And we get a notification from the service provider, we're going to reduce your services. So, yeah, of course, big trouble for us, because that can really cause us to slow down production or shut down production, which comes at a high cost. I could have called the Prime Minister, but probably without a lot of effect. But what we were doing, we've been asking around to our industry colleagues in the area, and they got the same message. They were also very worried, very concerned. So we kind of teamed up together with the single wagon load provider, together with the industry association, to get our voice heard and to get something done. Because we understand everybody needs to make their profit in the chain, right? But then ask us, what do you need from us to make it profitable, right? Because we cannot live without. So I think it's a good example, and I think it's for a lot of those cases that we need to work with each other as an industry and don't just look at our individual problem.
Thank you. Timo, have you got?
Yeah, so really glad to see this response, and I think it's indeed to break through the hesitation to get the right people in industry and service providers together, and that's what you, as I referred to already a couple of times on, for example, ammonia bunkering logistics systems, where we have producers outside of Europe. We want to bring that to Europe with intermediate players, bring that to end customers that are actually going to use that to decarbonize their systems. It's still relatively premature, but it is happening. We have those conversations and are very high hopes that we will make credible business models out of that. So really happy to see that the audience reflects on this is the recipe for success. And I have also a lot of confidence because I see these conversations happening at the moment. And I'm quite sure it's not only on ammonia, it's on CO2, it's on CCS, it's on methanol. You'll see that in all those areas where we'll, with these people together, solve a large scale of the problem that we have. So good to see that the room is also in that space.
The room and the audience. And actually now it's back to the room and the audience because we've got about 5 minutes for Q&A. So for people in the room, there are microphones. Just wave your hand, state your name, your affiliation. For people online, I think they can submit a question. He says, looking at Kirsty, nodding, and so. Questions from if you're not in the room, you can't submit a question. You can't ask a question. Ladies and gentlemen in the audience, what questions do you have to the? I'm happy to take very easy questions for me, sir. Please do wave because the lights are on my eyesight is not there.
Thank you. Interesting conversations. This is Ankur from DSM Shriram Limited. We are a multi-billion-dollar chemical conglomerate. I was just looking at a lot of themes which audience have answered. 3 things came up: sustainability, regulation, and competitiveness. Now, from now, with the war in Europe until the transition 2030, how much of this is achievable, keeping competitiveness in the mind? And do we see any real roadblock there? Because the rest of the world might start moving ahead with their own strategies and things, while Europe is into transition phase, also from the energy point of view. Some thoughts?
Okay, now that broadens the question beyond logistics a bit. Timo, you nodded. Does that mean you want to?
It indeed broadens the subject a bit. So it's quite a broad question. I think it's one of the big dilemmas on the table. I think it's been probably in the past couple of days that you spend a lot of conversations on this, and I think this is. This is where we need to find our way, and I think there's probably no single answer to the questions. I think we want to be at the forefront. Also, being Europe, we need to come together to find business models that make us more competitive than we are today. And I think the answer probably lies in that area, but there's no generic answer to that question from my side, to be honest. But it's just a big dilemma that we need to face.
Before I come to the others, there's a Wood Mackenzie reflection on this, on sort of refining and commodity chemicals. And it's more if we talk to producers in the US, the story is about decarbonisation. When's the right time to do it? We talk to producers in Europe. The question is, which asset do I consider I'll decarbonise? Because not all of them will be competitive. Yeah. So it's a very different landscape here for a host of reasons. So one of my hobby horse on this is actually how competitive is the European chemical industry structurally? Because if it's not there, you don't have to worry about decarbonising the supply chain because there's nothing to move. That's my overarching fear, but I didn't really want to bring that in. But that's something we know as a very big difference between North America and here is North America, assets competitive, they will remain competitive, we will decarbonize them. Here, there's much more working out which are the ones that get high graded to justify that investment, and we don't see that on the other side of the pond. Yeah. Sophie, Joss, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, it's beyond my area of expertise. I can only say I partly share the concern. So on the one hand, you want to do the right thing, but of course you want to keep on existing as a company. So I share the concern. That's all I can say.
Jost is a bit...
Yeah. Of course, competitiveness has to do with who is the best supplier to what the customer has asked for. So the first question for me is how quick will the market ask for low carbon products? I think that we as and then the cost part, so you have the demand part, which is of course very important. If you look at the cost part, I think that it's always the question about capacities, availability of solution and usage of the solution. So the more we as a sector are able to ask for low emission trucks and collaborate to have these alternative fuels in place, the lower the cost of the operation will become. Yeah? I think we have, if you look at the long run, competitiveness, the one who is the first movers now, who are willing to collaborate and to drive the change, will be the ones that are the most competitive in 2050. Put it that way.
Let's end it on that. That's a really good positive message. I'm just conscious the clock was ticking in front of me and the need for the speed interview, which, Bob, I think you're hosting. Are you hosting? Yeah. Good. So, ladies and gentlemen, join me in thanking the panelists for their great time, effort, and insightful comments on the questions that they've seen today. Thank you very much.
What was our position? So, Kirsti, we heard the voice of the audience, we heard the voice of the panelists. Now it's up to the hosts, right?
Yes, I agree completely. And I think the audience is also very curious to hear the voice and the messages of the hosts of today. And for that, I would like to call on stage both our commercial directors, Pascal Franken from H.Essers and Tom Houtkiet from Port of Antwerp-Bruges. Give them an applause, please.
All right, welcome, gentlemen. Tom, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
What are your takeaways from the TED Talk and the panel debate, in short?
First of all, Christophe, thank you for your TED Talk. It was an interesting one. The big line for me was that the chemical industry is ready to obey, and that's, in fact, that they are ready to go for low carbon processes. Yeah, but it has to be based on clear science targets, science-based targets. That was, for me, the big line. I think you refer to 3 pillars, technology, data sharing, and the last one, data sharing certification. I think these were the 3 topics I remember. So all of them are important. Technology, for sure. Transportation will go from fuels to electrons and molecules. And it's clear that chemical innovation will really be a driver to go to a new type of systems, which we will need. Also very important in the maritime sector. Data sharing, yes, data sharing. In order for us to understand the transparency, to create a transparent system, which gives transparency on end-to-end Scope 3 emission calculations. That's in fact what we all will need in future to understand how we will do, what is the color of and the origin of a certain molecule. And then the third one, certification. Yeah, that we
collaboration.
Indeed, collaboration certification also, that we will in fact will need to put the right origins of the green low carbon molecules on the ones who have the biggest willingness to pay in the value chain. That is what I understood.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Pascal, good afternoon. Are you enjoying the speaker session so far, and what are your key takeaways?
Definitely enjoyed it. My takeaways, of course, I'm not going to repeat what Tom was saying, but for me, one of the most important messages that what we heard in the intro talks of Christophe, saying that we are all part of one ecosystem. I think we need to realize that it is a responsibility of everybody, a responsibility of the sector, the chemical sector, working together with the supply chain. And I think this is a very important aspect when we want to achieve our targets. Yes, we need to work together, but very important is we need to realize that we have a responsibility to take. And it's not a debate about cost, it's a debate about responsibility. And that can only work when we really embed it into our strategy. So I think it should be part of our DNA today, of our future DNA, that sustainability is priority number one. I think we are responsible for the future of our business, of economy and our children. So we need to take up that responsibility and we need to act now. That's for me the takeaway.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Tom, as a major seaport and all the ecosystem around it, you're very familiar with the chemical market, with the scope 1, 2 and 3 ambitions of all stakeholders, also with the pace of technology. What is the Port of Antwerp-Bruges doing to walk the talk?
A lot, for sure. We have the comfort that we are not a private company, we're a public company, so we look different at a P&L. So it means also our shareholder is looking different at a P&L. So we have first the comfort, but also the obligation, in fact, to be a front runner, to pioneer on certain aspects where maybe the market is not, or the private companies do not have the possibility short term or ready to take it up. So that gives us that obligation also. And I just want to give some examples of what we do on the different scopes we have, the 3 scopes we have. First of all, we have put our flag that we want to be a multi-fuel port by 2025. That's easy said, but difficult done. So it means that we are a young merged port, Antwerp, Bruges together, and on both platforms, we have that target that we want to be able to give to our customers the possibility to fuel and to bunker whatever they want. So that's a very, very big task because we have the infrastructure need to be changed to be built for that, of course. But also don't underestimate safety security because much more people will handle difficult molecules in future much more than we do today. So all this has to be put in place. Where do we do this? What are the regulations? How do we audit? So that's first target what we have put. Another example is looking at our own emissions. 80% of our own emission is coming from our own tug float. So we have a lot of tugboats in Bruges, but also in Antwerp. And there, in fact, we are really pioneering worldwide. We are creating the first metatug and the first hydrotug, which are coming into operation this year. This is not an easy, far from, a lot of child diseases, but at the end, we are going through that. And we are convinced that it's the first one worldwide. We are convinced we have to take the lead. We are showing that it's possible, but also we do believe later onwards that we can share that know-how to other ports in the world because you have more than 30,000 tugboats around the world which have to go through the same process. So there is also a commercial idea behind. Yeah. Then the third one is a complete different example. We have one of the biggest container ports in Europe, and we drastically will increase our capacity. The famous ECA project, extra container capacity in Antwerp. Not in the concession agreements, but in the permits, it will be very clearly stated that the multimodality and the model shift, the model split we will be very clear on targeting, okay, we want 42% on barge, we want 15% on rail for container businesses, which are allocated with that expansion program. So very clear targets we set.
Thank you.
Yes, Pascal, you heard a couple of examples how the port of Antwerp-Bruges is trying to pioneer in sustainability projects. What is Essers doing today to decarbonize the cargo flows you are handling for your clients?
Yeah, we are doing a lot, but maybe let's go one step back. For us, decarbonization is a goal. It's a goal in terms of our sustainability strategy, but for us there's much more. Sustainability means not only decarbonization, it means also sustainability in processes, it means sustainability for people, it means sustainability in financials, it means sustainability in the customer relationship, but of course ecology is very important, and one of that goal is making sure that we lower our carbon footprint. We have designed a roadmap to reduce the carbon footprint. And there we work on several elements. You can achieve that by let's say, working on several elements within the supply chain. The first thing and the most easiest thing is to improve what we do today. To improve our carbon footprint by, for example, using alternative energy. We invest in solar panels. We have roughly 350,000 square meters of solar panels. We have invested in windmills. We have 6 windmills. In total, they generate more or less 28 megawatt power, and that's more or less the power that we need or we consume in our warehouses. So first thing we did is improving the source of energy in order to make our warehouse operations zero carbon footprint. I think that's a very important thing. Another thing that we do, of course, and that's the easiest thing, is avoid. If you don't use the energy, if you don't need the energy, then you don't create a carbon footprint. So what we also try to do is avoid as much as possible to generate energy, or to consume energy, sorry. We do that on several ways. First of all, it has all to do with the filling rate of warehouses, of trucks. I mean, in the past we worked with filling rates in the warehouses of 80%. We needed 20% for the flexibility. Today we work with filling rates of 95, 97%. I think that's already very important. But also in terms of transport, consolidation of consignments is very important. A truck that drives on the roads and is carrying air is only polluting. It's not bringing any added value. So it's very important that we reduce those empty miles in the transport. And in order to facilitate that, because planning is a very complex thing, a lot of people are involved in the planning process, but what we have done is we have developed our planning tool that is helping our operational people to give them different alternatives in terms of how to bring goods from A to B. They can choose the shortest way, they can choose the fastest way, they can choose the cheapest way, and they can also choose the way or the direction with the lowest emission. So we are facilitating them in their operations by investing in smart systems and smart algorithms that are helping them. The third element that we have implemented in our process is model shift. It has been told already a few times over here. I think we originally were a road carrier when we started our organization. Today we are quite proud to say that only 50% of the goods that we carry are transported by road. The other 50% are carried by rail or by barge. I think, and then when I'm talking about carrying, I mean, it's something like 150 million kilometers that we do each year over road, but we also do 150 million kilometers via rail or barge. So we shift the transport to a lower emission mode. That's a bit what the third element is in achieving that carbon-free emission. And then last but not least is our insetting. We cannot avoid to need trucks to deliver goods, or vans to deliver goods. And unfortunately, today, the zero emission truck is not yet existing when we talk about electrical truck on a high scale. It's not from a practical point of view, even if we have ordered it and even if we see them already on the road, it's not something that today is scalable. But what is scalable is the use of biofuel. So every transport company today can buy biofuel, biofuel that gives you a zero emission transport. Of course, there's a cost involved with it, and we have talked about it earlier also. The cost is very important. But I think the ambition should be there to convince and work together with our customers to transfer from fossil fuel to biofuel in order to lower that emission. And it's not just a statement that we make, because we have set up a complete system that if customers come to us and order a transport which is driven by a truck on biofuel, we can certify this transport by a certificate that can be used for us in our scope 1 and 2, but can be used as a scope 3 element for our customers. So together with Deloitte, we have certified our processes, and we can generate certificates that allow our customers to reduce their scope 3 emission. And I think this is the most important thing. What we end with is, again, working together in that ecosystem, we invest in lowering the scope 3 emissions of our customers.
All right. Tom, Port of Antwerp-Bruges is positioning itself as a European hydrogen hub. Can you elaborate on that? What is the impact on logistics?
Well, first of all, as I mentioned, so we are a merger between Port of Antwerp and Port of Bruges since 18 months now. And the energy transition, for sure hydrogen, energy transition has been one of the major drivers in order to make that merger. Yeah. Because we completely understand by teaming up that we are much stronger, that we really can be a front runner in the energy transition. And why is that? We have, of course, we have in Antwerp a huge chemical cluster, we all know that, but we have also in Bruges, we have a very important location on importation of 15% of the LNG of Europe today. And we have daughter company which is specialized in operating pipelines between platforms. So that's building blocks are there to get it kick-started. When we, since the merger, we really accelerated our strategic approach, and we are working on 3 different domains. We try to understand, first of all, what is it what we need. If we have that European target of importing 10 million tons of hydrogen by 2030, what does it mean for ourselves? And so it means, okay, you need a feedstock, you need energy for the Belgian economy, but also you need to supply an important part to other regions like North Rhine-Westphalia and Germany. Calculating all those figures, it means that we will have to import something like a 1.6 million ton of hydrogen by 2030. So 10 million ton of ammonia as a bulk park, as a target figure, and that's our ambition. And then you have to translate that in what does it mean for infrastructure? Yeah. Terminals that you need to foresee. So we are putting, as we speak, in the market new plots of land which people are subscribing to build a landing terminal and a cracking installation. Yes, both in Bruges and in Antwerp. Target timelines are somewhere around 2028 or order of magnitude. You need, of course, pipelines. Yeah. So in Belgium, this will be Fluxys. Timeline for the Belgian national backbone on hydrogen 2026 to be on the German border by 2028. So that becomes all really very tangible on what we do. Last one is we need to understand all, we see several people, Vopak is in the room, several people, we need to understand what are really the storage capacities we have today, which can be modified into new types of molecules for the future. And also that we calculated, it's clear that we come to a bulk park figure of around 1 million ton of capacity by 2030, which with the rotation must make it possible to come to that 10 million ton of ammonia. So that's on infrastructure. So all different projects which fits in a roadmap and where we have to fit the timeline and to align the timeline. And then we come to the supply, because the molecules have to come from somewhere. And there we are scanning, in fact, worldwide. all the projects we think are important, of course, in a specific region which fits to supply European markets. We talk about Northern Africa, Middle East, Gulf region, East Side, US, Canada. Those are the most logic regions for ourselves, which have to come to supply to Europe. And we are trying to understand what is our role, what can we do in order to bring those project builders in contact with the offtake markets or the infrastructure builders on our side. So we have a full type of roadmap facilitating role to make it happen and to be sure that the first molecules for Europe will come in our direction, and that, of course, hopefully they will be cost attractive also, level playing field to compete with other regions, and as such support the chemical industry.
All right, very interesting.
Yeah, indeed, Bob. So we heard energy transition, we heard sustainability, Pascal. Also a lot of challenges indeed for the chemical industry and for transport companies as yourself. How positive are you towards the future on a scale from 1 to 10? And yeah, so about the whole decarbonization part in the chemical logistics.
Slightly positive in the way that I would give it a 5 to 10. But not a half-empty glass, but a half-full glass. I think we need to realize, and when I'm talking about supply chain, we all know supply chain is more or less the backbone of economy. Yeah? We have seen that with the disruptive elements in the past. When supply chain doesn't work, it has a huge impact on economy. And knowing that, it is our moral duty to make that supply chain or that backbone sustainable. And I think within the supply chain, professional companies take their responsibility, they are working on it. What I still miss a bit is really that collaboration. I mean, it has been mentioned today a lot of times, but I think we as a segment and we as a service provider, we really need to co-create, co-design sustainable solutions. And we tell that to all our customers, please, first, not talk about costs or not talk about difficulties, but take up the challenge to co-create a more sustainable solution. And at the end of the day, the total cost of that supply chain will lower. And if it's not directly, it's indirectly. And that's a bit where that's why I'm saying the glass is half full. There are a lot of intentions to do good things, but still, I think there's a lot of more to do, a lot of more to co-create, to work together, to bring that sustainable solution to the market. And that's a bit why I challenge the industry and I say, please, let's act, let's work together, and we can make it better.
I think a nice call for action for the audience, Bob.
Voilà. With those nice words, we can conclude this speed interview. Thank you, gentlemen. It's clear that, and that's the main message of today, that sustainable supply chains in the chemical industry are feasible, and referring to Al Gore at the Davos session, yes, we can act today, that is the positive thing, and with that great portion of positivism, I'll leave it to you, Kirsti, to close this session.
Yes, thank you, Bob. Also thank you to Essers for the collaboration, and also thank you to the EPCA organization for this atypical speaking session we organized today. Also, a big thanks, of course, to the audience for being here, also for the audience online, of course. The whole session is recorded, so you can revise it if you like. Also, the colleagues from Essers and from Port of Antwerp-Bruges are available to continue the discussions at our booth at the mezzanine, on the mezzanine 1 floor. So please step by today or tomorrow to continue discussions, or reach out to us later on to see how we can further cooperate. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.